Welcome to the deep dive. So the sources we're looking at today are just fascinating. We're diving into a really specific, historically rich corner of Canada, Waterloo County, Ontario. For, more than a century, this region has been known as the undisputed German center of the country.
It's an exceptional case study, really. It's all about identity and loyalty. Our mission here is to get a fast but thorough understanding of how these deep cultural roots interact with, a national allegiance.
A new national allegiance.
Exactly. We're looking at a population that just completely dominated the demographics of the region, yet they became so staunchly, so proactively Canadian.
Right, and that's the central question we have to tackle, isn't it?
No.
How did this massive German community hold on to its heritage, celebrating German festivals, traditions, all of it, while at the same time just fundamentally rejecting political influence from the old country?
Especially during the rise of Nazism.
Especially then. It's a huge test.
Well, what's fascinating here and what the sources show is that the story is it's a lot more complex than just one single wave of immigration.
Okay.
You're looking at really distinct groups. There are the early Mennonite pioneers, and then later you have the Lutheran industrial settlers.
Two very different groups.
Very different. But the consistent trend, the thing that unifies them, was this proactive drive toward integration. And a lot of it was driven by economics and, this is crucial, the fact that they'd already politically distanced themselves from Germany before they even got to Canada.
So this isn't a story of fighting assimilation?
No, not at all. It's a story of choosing a new political loyalty.
Okay, so to really get the weight of that choice, we first have to understand the sheer scale of their presence. Let's start there, with the two major waves of settlement.
Right. The first wave arrived really early, starting around 1800. These were the Pennsylvania German pioneers.
Mostly Mennonites, I understand.
Largely Mennonites, yes. They secured the initial land grants, what was known as Block 2 of the Grand River Land Grant. That really opened up the region, and they established these early, very successful farming communities.
And their legacy is, well, it's literally built into the landscape. You have the Waterloo Pioneers Memorial Tower, which was finished in 1926.
A very clear marker. But their numbers were soon, they were followed by a huge second influx.
The continental German immigrants.
Correct. They arrived mostly in the mid-19th century, and these were predominantly Lutheran. And they didn't really focus on farming. They settled in the growing towns.
In Berlin, what we now call Kitchener and Waterloo.
Exactly. And they became the absolute backbone of the region's industrial boom.
The scale of this immigration.
Yeah.
It's hard to really wrap your head around it. Just how dominant were they?
The numbers are staggering. If you just look at the period from the late 1820s up to Confederation in 1867.
Okay.
Nearly 75% of all of Ontario's German population, that's over 115,000 people, settled right there in that one region.
75%. Wow. So this wasn't just some small pocket of immigrants.
No, this was the heart of the region. And that massive concentration is what makes their later political rejection of Germany so monumental.
So by the early 20th century, the whole social fabric of Waterloo was just fundamentally German.
Absolutely. You can see it reflected in the religious numbers. The number of Lutherans in the county literally doubled in just 10 years, between 1851 and 1861.
Just a decade.
Just a decade. And by the 1911 census, studies found that, an overwhelming majority, we're talking 80% of Waterloo residents and 73% of Berlin residents, were of German origin. For all intents and purposes, this was the German heart of Canada.
Okay, so that raises the big question. If they were so numerous, so culturally dominant, why didn't they try to carve out some kind of German political enclave? Why assimilate so quickly and with so much enthusiasm?
The answer is really in why they left in the first place. This is where you have to separate German culture from the German state. Most of these German Canadians, they weren't trying to replicate Germany. They were often seeking refuge from it, or at least from the political turmoil of Central Europe.
So many of them weren't even from Germany proper, right? They were from German-speaking settlements elsewhere.
Exactly. Places like Russia, Poland, Romania, Czechoslovakia. They were often political refugees already.
So their first political decision wasn't becoming Canadian, it was leaving their old system behind. The political ties were already weak or even broken before they got here.
That's the key. Moving to Canada was just the next step in shedding those old problematic loyalties. Their political allegiance was, it was up for grabs. They were choosing stability and rights over an ancestry defined by conflict.
And their jobs, their economic lives really pushed that choice forward. The sources mention that Eastern Canada's focus on industry helped promote assimilation faster than, say, farming communities out west.
Right, because in Waterloo, the economy was all about manufacturing. Furniture, textiles, rubber. You had to trade with Toronto, with Montreal, with the U.S.
You couldn't run a factory just speaking German.
You couldn't. It was an economic necessity. Assimilation wasn't just a political ideal. It was a requirement for success. So that just sped up the adoption of English and engagement with the broader Canadian society.
And by 1867, with Confederation, they get full rights, and we see them out in the streets celebrating. Tell us about that celebration in Berlin.
Oh, it was a massive statement. The records say 5,000 people, German and English speakers side by side, celebrating with parades, bands, ringing church bells. It was a declaration.
We are part of this now.
We are fully invested. And you also have that interesting detail about the royal family.
Yeah, that's a great little tidbit. Queen Victoria's husband.
Prince Albert, a German prince. So the thinking was it was relatively simple for a German to become Queen Victoria's loyal subject, kind of softened the transition, made British-Canadian loyalty feel a little less foreign.
And they built their own symbols of this new shared identity. Waterloo Park, the Pioneer Memorial Tower. These weren't about German nationalism.
No, they were symbols of a mutual Canadian identity, just one that happened to have German roots.
But, and this is a big but, despite that political choice, they held on fiercely to their culture. They didn't just forget where they came from.
Not at all. They actively celebrated it, sometimes in ways that, must have raised a few eyebrows.
Right, like the Friedensfest, the German Peace Jubilee in 1871. They were celebrating a German military victory over France in Canada.
And they hosted 9 Sängerfests, these huge singing festivals that brought German choirs from all over Ontario and even New York State. These were very public displays of heritage.
And then there's the big one, the monument of Emperor Wilhelm I, erected in Victoria Park in 1897.
Right. And that really gets to the core of the tension. How do you square celebrating a German Kaiser's military victory with, declaring fierce loyalty to the Canadian government?
It seems like a total contradiction.
It does, but I think the answer is that they felt so secure in their political choice, in their Canadianness, that they felt they had the freedom to celebrate their heritage without it being seen as subversion.
But that statue of Wilhelm, that became a flashpoint, didn't it?
It became the flashpoint during World War I, precisely when that loyalty was put to the test, and it eventually had to come down.
But long before that, their loyalty was pretty clear in their day-to-day lives. They were active in Canadian politics. They held a huge reception for Sir Charles Tupper. They supported William Lyon Mackenzie King.
Their commitment just got stronger over time. And the final proof came right before World War II. In 1939, they all turned out to see King George VI and Queen Elizabeth when they visited.
A huge deal.
A huge deal. And then, the moment war broke out, the Lutheran Synod sent a telegram of loyalty to Prime Minister King. No ambiguity, just immediate support.
So as one of the sources puts it, there was no question where their loyalty lay. They had built something new.
An identity strong enough to weather any storm. And that loyalty was about to face its ultimate test in the 1930s. We know Nazi Germany was actively trying to influence German populations abroad.
Right. They wanted Waterloo to be a recruiting ground.
They did. But the outcome in Waterloo was just remarkably clear. No substantial Nazi or Hitler support ever developed there before the war. Groups like the Friends of the New Germany that had success elsewhere.
They failed in Waterloo.
Largely, yes. When you look at the numbers, the biggest pro-Nazi groups had a total membership of only 565 people in 1937.
Out of a population that was 75% German. That's a tiny fraction, less than 1%.
A tiny, tiny fraction.
But you have to wonder, could that have been just the tip of the iceberg? Did that small group have more influence than their numbers suggest?
They did not. The sources are pretty clear that the attempts to mobilize the community just fell flat. The locals found the whole movement more ridiculous than threatening.
And this is where we get that amazing anecdote about the local attempt to start a swastika club.
Oh, it's just fantastic. The local effort by a man named Otto E. Becker.
It gets almost comical.
It is. A detailed study called it a comical farce, which generated more laughter than serious support. Becker's club just couldn't get any traction. The established, successful German Canadians saw these radical ideas as alien and disruptive.
So they weren't just apathetic, they actively mocked it.
They ridiculed it. The German language press, community leaders, they just refused to take him seriously. That cultural dismissal is so powerful.
And their Lutheran faith gave them a kind of philosophical shield against this too, right?
It was a huge distancing factor. The Lutheran Church believes that church and state have separate spheres of authority. They shouldn't interfere with each other.
So you can be a good Lutheran and a good Canadian, and there's no conflict.
Exactly. Your faith and culture are private, spiritual matters, separate from Ottawa or Berlin. It meant the Eastern German population was, politically speaking, considered finished as Germans. They had consciously cut those ties.
So the German influence didn't just vanish with assimilation. It changed. It became institutionalized. Waterloo became the Lutheran center for the whole district.
That was a key moment in the early 20th century. The founding of the Waterloo Evangelical Lutheran Seminary in 1911 and then Waterloo College in 1924. Those were major milestones. They anchored the heritage.
But even those anchors immediately started to integrate. The college affiliated with the University of Western Ontario. It started admitting women.
They were constantly shedding those purely restrictive Germanic roots, even while they were preserving a cultural orientation. They became Canadian institutions with German origins, not German institutions in Canada.
And the story continues, because after World War II, the region becomes a major destination for a new wave of German refugees.
Right. People expelled from Eastern Europe, from places like Romania and Poland. And these people, who were often fleeing profound trauma, they brought new cultural flavors, but also a deep sense of gratitude and an even stronger desire to assimilate.
So that history of choice, of loyalty, it just repeated itself.
It did. And today, the heritage is celebrated so publicly, but it's completely stripped of any political allegiance. I mean, the Kitchener-Waterloo Oktoberfest is now Canada's largest Bavarian festival. It's a celebration of heritage, not nationality.
And the academic side is still so strong with the Waterloo Center for German Studies. The roots are still deep, even if the political branches were pruned over a century ago.
And if you connect this back to the big picture, Waterloo County's history really shows that deep cultural heritage and rapid, decisive political assimilation, they aren't mutually exclusive.
In fact, one might even drive the other.
It seems so. That desire to flee political conflict often drives loyalty to the new nation. They chose stability over ancestry.
It's a powerful lesson in how a nation is built. Loyalty isn't a birthright. It's a deliberate choice made by people seeking peace.
And that really leads to a final provocative thought for you, the listener. Given that so many of these immigrants had already removed themselves from the German state, often as refugees, what does that tell you about the role trauma and displacement can play in strengthening allegiance to a new country? Does choosing Canada become easier, more permanent, when the homeland is defined by the very conflict you fled? It's something to think about as you watch loyalties being forged in our world today.
Thank you for diving deep with us.